Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We have a very, very special guest joining us today. You're really going to like this, folks. We have Elizabeth Weller joining us today. She's one of the 20 brave women that are suing the state of Texas to try to help us straighten out these draconian, brutal infringements on women's health care rights. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. Super sharp. You're going to love her. I've been bragging on you folks too, by the way. So I'm going to need you to really not make a liar out of me. I've been telling her how smart you folks are, how informed you folks are, and how ahead of the curve you are in most of our conversations. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's get after it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being here. How are you doing this fine day?
We're doing really well. Just had breakfast, so ready to go on, get the show on the road. I feel like I should have worn my cowboy hat today.
Hope your coffee's as good as mine.
I actually, I'm gonna get hate for this. I don't actually drink a lot of coffee. I can't stand the taste, actually.
We won't hold that against you. We won't. It's coffee with Texas Paul, but that's okay. We've got tea drinkers. We got all kinds here. I really appreciate you being here. I really do. And I'm going to start this conversation in the weirdest way possible. Okay, let me just frame this out for you. This is going to seem like it's coming out of left field, but trust me, I'm going to land this plane. This is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. This is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And she's in a lot of hot water right now. It has been just blowing up all over the news and social media and everything. She's not quite right. She really is not quite right. She put a book out, and she really believed in that book it was going to be a really good idea. It was going to buy her a lot of political cred if she told the story of when she shot her 14-month German wire-haired pointer in the face in a gravel pit on her property. Because, it showed she's tough and she knows how to deal with problem situations. The background story on that, it doesn't make it any better. She decided to take the dog out hunting. She has some more experienced hunting dogs. She said, okay, we're going to take this young dog out. It's only 14 months. We're going to take this young dog out hunting. We're going to, let it work with the older dogs, and we're going to teach this dog how to be a hunting dog, which Elizabeth, I don't know if you're a hunter or rural or anything like that. Okay. Hunting dogs are expensive. They are.
I would expect so, yeah.
They are very expensive. They are. I mean, you can pay 10 grand for a hunting dog. You can, because they are extremely well trained. And training a hunting dog entails a hell of a lot more than just pairing it up with a couple other dogs. I guarantee you what you did here is she just read about it, because that's what professional hunters will do. Hunting dog trainers will do. They'll pair a dog up that they're going to train with an experienced dog, and they'll take it out several times, so that the dog figures out, okay. Oh, this is what makes master happy. Let me do what this dog is doing. You know what I mean? Well, they take this dog out hunting, and it doesn't do so well. It doesn't. It does what wire-haired pointers do, which is go absolutely ape the minute you turn it loose. They've got incredible amounts of energy. They can run and range for miles. No kidding. These dogs can range like up to 9 miles. I mean, they're just physically incredible dogs. They are, and just wired for sound, you know. So this dog goes nuts, and they have a terrible pheasant hunt, and they call the hunt off because the dog won't behave. They got a shock collar on it, and it won't respond to the shock collar, and it's just pissed off, and they're going home. So when they're going home, they stop at some friends' houses on the way, and when they open up the truck door, old Cricket, their dog, says, "Oh, we're still hunting." Jumps out of the truck and takes off. Gets a hold of the neighbor's chickens, kills a couple chickens. "Hey, aren't you proud of me? I brought you some birds. Ain't you proud of me?" She went running over. Kristi Noem went running over and went to grab the dog when the dog is mid-killing chicken, and the dog turned around, growled at her, snapped at her, which is what a dog will do if it's killing. So, you know, I don't know if you've ever separated a dog before that's been in it. Right, they're a bit aggressive at that point. Snaps at her. So they get the dog loaded up, and she's very vehement about the fact that she wrote a check for the chickens. The people were very upset. They were their prize chicken. Takes the dog home, takes it out at that point to a gravel pit that they have, and shoots it in the face.
Oh.
Now, the reason we're telling this story, I know it's crazy, not exactly the subject you came here to discuss, I'm sure. The reason we're talking about that is sane people listen to this story and said, "That's nuts. That's insane. That's insane." In this day and age, it's not like Katie Carroll here says she and Herschel Walker have a lot in common. Yeah. In this day and age, this isn't the 1850s. If you got a dog that's misbehaving in the 1850s, it's really not practical to saddle up your horse or wagon or whatever, go 2 days into town and drop the dog off or do whatever you're going to do with the dog and then come back home, because you got to leave your house for 3, 4, 5 days unattended to deal with the situation. And back in the 1850s, they'd have shot that dog. They would have. If they felt they couldn't trade, well, they wouldn't have given up on it on one hunting trip, to be honest with you. I mean, the whole thing's just asinine and stupid. But so people with common sense are responding to this, and they're horrified because, South Dakota, she likes to pretend it's some other world. It's not. They have cell towers. There's a South Dakota Humane Society. She's the governor. She knows people. If she had a dog she needed to get rid of or wanted to get rid of, it's a phone call. People will come pick this dog up. Especially a German wired hair. That's not a cheap dog, even untrained. I mean, that's a sought after hunting dog. But she says she was really angry, and she shot that dog in the face, and that gives her street cred. So here's where it comes to our subject. I posted about that. I'm like, look, folks, this whole story she's telling doesn't fly. This is not rural America. This isn't reality. What she's saying now is bull crap. And the responses I got was, "You Democrats like to kill babies, but you can't take it when somebody shoots a puppy dog."
All right, apples to oranges right there, but even still.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. That was the overwhelming retort from the right wing trying to defend her, is we just like to kill babies. And the way I'm going to land this plane and bring this to you is the reason the right wing is able to do what it does is when you start talking about the subject of women's health care, They live in hypothetical fantasy land. The people that were responding that way, they don't know anything about the subject they're talking about. They've never dealt with the reality of it. All they know is that they're going to create this fiction in their head that we're a bunch of Democrats and, woohoo, it's Tuesday. Let's grab some beers and go out and have some abortions. That's the way we live, man. We love it. That's the way we roll. You want to go to the club or the abortion clinic, man? Both are entertaining.
Yeah.
They live in this fantasy land. And that's why I am so grateful that you are here, because there ain't nothing happy about this, and ain't nobody happy about this. Nobody's ever happy about this, but it's necessary, and it's reality, and people are really, really dealing with this. And I just think the more people that know folks like you, understand your story and where you're at and what's going on, what's happened, the more likely people are to have realistic conversations instead of their fantasy land made up crap. What do you think? Am I off base, or am I right on, or where am I?
No, I think that's on point. And I kind of wanted to, before we begin, really getting into the matter, I do want to preface, I am inherently a very sunny disposition type of person. So I do want to tell people that when I do talk about this, sometimes I make light of some of the situation. That's not to say it's not serious. I will say that for someone who has gone through it, you kind of have to find the lighter sides of things. So just kind of jumping off of what you said there, and to preface how I am going forward, it's me coping with the situation. No, I think a lot of people do, especially Republicans, I think they do live in this world where abortion is it's come a long way with the story of who gets abortions, right? This is not something new. Who gets an abortion and why they get an abortion. The story that is circulating along the lines of the conservative Republican demographics, they think that women who get abortions use them as birth control. They get abortions because, they went out, had a night with somebody, got pregnant, and was like, uh-oh, and just willy-nilly made the decision. They don't realize that abortion is healthcare. They don't realize that abortion includes dealing with issues like miscarriages. They don't realize that pregnancy and pregnancy management, miscarriage management, sometimes ultimately comes to an abortion. And I don't think that the legal landmines that have been created in the state of Texas, I think, have kind of also helped perpetuate that notion, because, and we'll get into it, but when I was in a situation where I needed an abortion, people weren't using that word. People weren't using "you need an abortion." People were using the words "you need an early delivery." And so I think that our ways of legally traversing the situation kind of help perpetuate the idea that who is getting abortions are still the type of people that these Republicans have created in their minds over the span of decades.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really hit me here in Texas. Everyone I talk to mentions exactly what you're talking about. And folks, I didn't mean to cut short here. Elizabeth is one of the 20 women that are part and parcel to the Zorowski v. Texas lawsuit. That is currently going on. Because it's currently going on, we're limited as to what we can really specifically. This is an ongoing case, folks. We're kind of limited to what we can talk about regarding we're going to give you the generalities. We're going to get to all that. But yeah, what you were talking about, Elizabeth, I was amazed. Used to be, doctor would just walk in and say, you need a D&E. You need a D&C. That's what needs to happen. Now they have to speak in this code speak. They have to talk around the subject. That was one of the things when we did a show on Amanda Zarowski, and that was one of the things the doctors did with her is we're going to stop this conversation right now before anybody's in trouble, and I'm not going to tell you what you have to do, but you got to leave the state. I mean, they were blunt with her about that. That we can't talk. I mean, it is so bad in the state of Texas with I call Ken Paxton evil Popeye, and the vindictive nature of what they're doing. The doctors, they can't even really talk to their patients, not directly.
That's kind of like, so I don't remember at what point in time Zarowski, Amanda, where her situation came forward. I think it might have been maybe a little bit after mine. Um, so mine ended up happening when I had the miscarriage. So I was about 20 weeks at this point. And I went to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, so here, let me backtrack. So I can paint this narrative for everybody here because I think it's important. It was the week before um I had a miscarriage. And in that week, there was the leak that Roe versus Wade was going to be turned over. And I remember calling my husband. He was leaving school because he's a teacher. He was leaving school, and I called him and I said, "You know what? I don't know if I want to raise our daughter in this state if this is the trajectory that the state is going." Little did I know that that law, the way that this state was going, was actually going to impact me the next week.
And
And that,
that's the point in time that the states were all running out and getting the trigger bills on file, so that when Dobbs happened, they were going to have draconian laws ready to go. And I mean, just this is when you're dealing with your medical crisis, the environment that's going on, the hospitals, the doctors are all this is the crap storm that all of this is going on around while you're trying to get some health care, right? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah. So I just kind of wanted to paint the political environment before the miscarriage actually happened. So that following week, I get up out of bed and I feel this pressure shifting. I instinctively reach down with my arms to catch whatever is going to happen here. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. And all of a sudden, this gush of fluid comes out of me. I scream because I know what that means, right? I've never been pregnant before. I've never had my water break before, but I was told you'll know when it happens. And when that happened, yeah, I screamed, I panicked. I was like, oh, this is the thing. We ended up going to the hospital that night, or that really immediately. And I stayed there. I got into the hospital like late evening, like when they were finally starting to move me up. They were connecting me to all these machines running tests because they needed to make sure that what happened was, in fact, my amniotic sac bursting, was, in fact, that my water had broken. And so they take me upstairs. They start doing all the scans again. I'm trying to get answers here because I don't know what's happening. I get the feeling that something bad is happening, but no one will tell me straightforward. You're going to lose your baby. No one said anything like that. Um, Technician just tells me I have to wait for the doctor. My primary OBG wasn't available at the time. I believe she was working at a different hospital that night. And another doctor comes in and he tells me, well, Miss Weller, your water has broken. You seem to have lost a lot of amniotic fluid. And right now, all we can do, and this will always stick with me, he said, all we can do is hope and pray. And I did not know what to say to that. I was just flabbergasted that they would tell me that, but not say, "You're losing your baby." They wouldn't say that. And so I was confused. I was in awe. This is me and my husband's first pregnancy. We definitely very much wanted her at this point. So I was born with a physical disability myself. Um, I got it through, it wasn't, I didn't get my disability as a result of genetic issues or anything like that. I got it as a result to complications through childbirth, the physical process of it. And me and my husband, we had made the decision that no, we're just so excited. This is our first pregnancy. We're so excited to be parents. We're going to be parents to a little girl. Let's just bypass genetic testing. Let's bypass all that because we're going to have this baby. And
I
okay.
just want to clarify that. I mean, because that is an important point for people to understand. In what you're going through, you don't know everything that's going on. Nobody's giving you any clarity. Your experience, your history, you have a disability with your right hand, right? That was a result of a difficult childbirth. Correct. So here you are with your first baby that you desperately want, and we're having complications.
And there was just this vague environment. So they finally admit me into labor and delivery, which is where they put you. I will say that that's a problem in itself. Women who are going through the issues that we're going through, to be put into labor and delivery is horrible. You hear the noises of women going into labor, and they're at full term. And you're sitting there like, I'm not going to get to reach that. Oh. And that night, finally my primary OB is able to get onto a phone with me, and she tells me, okay, so I'm here to give you the pretty much the rundown of what's going on here. You have suffered PPROM. It's the premature rupture of the membrane. Your water broke too early. We are not entirely sure why this happens. Honestly, some women are just susceptible to it. And you're just unfortunately are one of the women who have experienced PPROM right now. And I said, okay. Before she starts getting into this discussion, actually, I had told her up front, I said, look, doctor, I am here. People are telling me I have to hope and pray. People are telling me to keep hope alive, but I have no idea what's going on. I get the feeling that people are lying to me. And she says, yeah, we have to have this discussion. And then that's when she goes into the PPROM thing. And she tells me, and I want you to know that once this situation has happened, once your amniotic sac has broken, you are now susceptible to infection. What that means is your uterus is open to bacteria to enter it and to begin to fester in your uterus. What that can mean for you is that you can become septic, that you now have the increased risk of having your uterus infected, which would lead to the possibility that you could lose your uterus and any future possibility of being pregnant. On top of that, if it gets worse enough, you could die. I'm hearing those words and I'm like, well, okay. So that's the severity of what we're happening here. And so she says, so I recommend you begin antibiotics immediately. To me, no brainer. Absolutely. Let's start antibiotics. My life is now at jeopardy. Let's start antibiotics. Let's go. And then she says, so, okay, we'll start antibiotics. I'll order that, but you also have another decision to make. And she tells me, I need to be very clear with you on this. Your daughter is at 20 weeks. You have the choice of making the decision of whether or not you want to continue to be pregnant or to have an early delivery. And I said, okay, please explain those options to me. She says, if you decide that you want to continue to be pregnant, you will remain here in your hospital bed for the remainder of your pregnancy. We will try to get your daughter to 24 weeks. 24 weeks is the earlier time period of viability for your daughter, for the fetus. Um,
And
and
I don't mean to interrupt you, but 24 weeks really isn't the touchdown. It's not. It's just so that the audience understands.
24 weeks is very, very early in development. And that's something my doctor also wanted also to clarify too, is that let's say you do get to 24 weeks. The odds of your baby's survival are bleak. It
Slim to none
is,
and slim is packing.
yeah, it is not likely. If we do get to 24 weeks, your daughter could be born with horrific deformities. And she knew about my physical disability. She said, and I want you to know this is not livable deformities. This is organ deformities that, let's say you do deliver her and she lives, she will probably not live for more than a few hours, not even, maybe a few days. But that is, you're not looking at an enjoyable quality of life. And so I said, okay. Um, so she just wanted to be very clear of what would happen if I decided to be pregnant. And she also wanted me to know that I might be prolonging the emotional weight and the mental weight of what the experience that I was going through already. And then she said, your other option is you could decide to do an early delivery, in which case, um, you would, kind of begin the healing process for yourself. And you kind of have to come to the terms with the facts of the science at place here. Your daughter's not going to survive. Um, and you're really putting yourself more so at risk and you're prolonging everything that's kind of happening here. But she said, you know what? That's just me speaking as a doctor. You ultimately have to make that decision for yourself. You and your husband have to make that decision. Um, and this is just what you have to do. And I said, okay. Right then and there, in the back of my head, I already knew what I was going to do. Um, I have trouble with seeing things that I care about go through pain that they don't need to. I have 3 dogs. I'm a pet lover. And in that moment, it became very apparent to me that if I decided to be pregnant, if I decided to stay pregnant, this wasn't just about me. This was about the harm that I could be putting on this baby, this daughter inside of me, who I had already named, who I had already had an idea of what she would look like, the personality she would have. And I was like, does she need to suffer more than she already, more than what's already here? And that's just
Well,
what it's like to be.
and to be fair, and so the audience understands, 24 weeks is not the goal. Uh, Fetuses at 24 weeks don't have developed organs. They don't have developed lungs. It's surviving because of your immune system and your heartbeat, not its own.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Someone will have to, in the audience is smarter than me, will have to correct me on this, but I believe at 24 weeks, your fetus doesn't have skin,
I don't
doesn't
think
have
so.
fully formed skin. They will try to move heaven and earth to keep a fetus that's removed from the mother at 24 weeks alive. But that fetus has to, on its own, with its own unformed circulatory system, unformed organs, has to try to finish developing
Yep.
outside its natural environment, and it doesn't work. It
And
doesn't, folks.
and that's what my doctor was also saying, 'cause she also clarified, your amniotic fluid is there for development. Absent of that, there is no development. You're essentially hitting the pause button, but your body is acting as a generator. And that's just it. You're hitting the pause on development while still keeping something alive. Um, the best way that I could relate that to something is making the decision of when somebody is on their deathbed is fundamentally, just not conscious, cannot move, anything like that, but you still have them hooked up to life support. And that's it. That's all that's happening inside of you at that point. And so I kind of already knew what my decision was going to be. They started me on antibiotics that night. That night, I was experiencing blood clots about the size of like a quarter that was exiting my body. I was having discharge come out of me the entire time. By discharge, I mean amniotic fluid. I was experiencing cramps. They had me on antibiotics to at least stave off any type of infection that could develop. Um, my husband was coming back from taking care of the dogs here at home, and he came into the hospital room, and I told him what the doctor basically told me. And I told him, I already know what I'm gonna do. I just wanna talk to you and see if you're also comfortable with the situation. There there is no greater, like, it's just the pain of coming to terms with the fact that you have to do this is hard enough, and then to see the pain on your own spouse's face, having to come to terms with the realization of what you both have to do is hard. And we cried, we just cried for hours that night, but we knew what the right choice was for the health of me, and for our family. And so, we made that decision that night, and then the next morning, my doctor comes in, and, I one of the things that I told, Mr. Paul Schroeder here is that I wanted to highlight to the audience the mental toll that this takes on an individual, and it starts that night. The next morning, my doctor came in, and I woke up, and I told her, I was like, "I thought after going to sleep that I would realize this was not as hard, or that this whole problem would go away." And then she hugs me, and she holds me, and she says, "It doesn't. I am so sorry." And I will say this, I am one of the few people in this lawsuit against the state of Texas who can proudly say my doctor was an incredible advocate for me and who fundamentally understood the weight of what was happening here. Um, she sat down and she basically told me, if this was a friend or a sister, that she would be, in she would put her weight of support behind the decision that I was making here because she understood the consequences of choosing to remain pregnant in this situation. So she was very supportive. She said to me, "Okay, now that you've made the decision that you wanna go to the route of early delivery," again, we're not using the word abortion, "that you wanna go to the route of early delivery, I now have to go to administration to get the clearance for this." And we're like, "Great." At no point in this conversation did this seem like this was going to be an issue. This seemed like this was a cut and dry case. We were gonna move forward, we were gonna get it early delivery that day, and that was it. So, a few hours pass, my husband and I are trying to take our minds off of things. We turn on the TV in the hospital room, and there's all this news about Roe v. Wade impending overturn. And, we're just like it is dominating the news cycle, and we can't get away from it. You hear these babies screaming in labor and delivery, and it's insane. There is no there's no solution, there's no type of peace during these little moments you're waiting for an answer. My doctor comes back and she says, "So, at the moment, I can't touch you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, unfortunately, and I am so sorry, unfortunately, despite the fact that you are reporting blood clots, despite the fact that you are reporting cramps, despite the fact that you have amniotic fluid leaking out of you, despite the fact that we know your daughter will not survive on paper because you have accepted the because you have accepted the antibiotics. You have staved off any formation of a bacterial infection inside of your uterus, your blood work, everything comes back that you are okay. And because of that, we cannot step in. You, in the eyes of the law, are not sick enough for medical intervention at this point.
Pause, put a pin in that, because we have to clarify for the audience. What you are saying is you aren't dying. You aren't on death's door. You do not have a severe infection, and therefore their medical intervention won't be on paper to go to court and prove that they're not criminals in the state of Texas. You are not dying enough. Period.
And I was like, what do you mean here? Because at this point, I need people to understand, at this point in my brain, despite how rational of an individual that I am, and I consider myself a very rational being, despite how rational I am, in that moment, it is survive or not. Your brain goes into survival mode. And you're just like, you can't process anything. It becomes at this point, your brain becomes just give me the path of least resistance because I need to get out of this situation. And so I asked her, I was like, what do you mean you can't touch me? What's going on? I need you to really explain this to me. And she said, well, Miss Weller, you can turn on the news and you will see that the political environment right now at the national level is that Roe v. Wade will be overturned. Had this been a few weeks ago, I'd probably be able to help you. But in the midst of all this, everyone's scared. If we were to act and we get sued for this, the entire hospital network shuts down. And I need people to understand this. There are people in the ER getting surgeries, life-saving surgeries. There are women giving birth. There are people in there getting transplants. There are people who are probably staving off bullet wounds in this hospital. And because they act on my case, that entire system shuts down. The weight of that on somebody is how do you say, no, you need to prioritize me over everybody else? How do you say that? You don't, you can't. And so, we went back and forth, me and my doctor. We were like, how can we, and this is going to sound crazy, but it's like, how can we go back with a counter argument to help me? How can we go back and maybe say, well, consider this, this, and this. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, you just a few hours before are happily pregnant. You and your husband are expecting a little girl. You've had ultrasounds. You've got the ultrasounds on the fridge. You have gone from that joy to the terrible fear of not knowing what's going on because you felt your water broke. But at that point, you don't really know what it means. You go to the hospital, and over hours after hours after hours, nobody will talk to you because the legal environment in the state, due to guys like evil Popeye here, Ken Paxton, nobody's talking to you. You're going through just the agonizing torture of not knowing what's going on. Then you get told you're going to lose your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, it's going to be hell on earth for your baby. And she's likely not going to survive. And what little life she have is going to be torture. We have to do something about that. And you and your husband, who have gone from, we got a little baby girl coming, to going through the agonizing decision and acceptance that that's not going to happen, to making the decision to save your life, to now being told, nah, your decision doesn't matter. Evil Popeye's decision here is what matters. this guy who's not a doctor, he has no medical training, he's just a vindictive jackass who's willing to do anything because of politics. He's willing to. You're living through this, and your doctor is coming to tell you, without telling you, this guy's going to hurt me. He's going to hurt my family. He's going to hurt you. He's going to hurt everybody. And now you're left in the situation of, I've made this decision. We've made this heart-wrenching decision. We've been through this train wreck that we did not want to happen. Now you're telling me what? I got to be permanently disabled. I've got to be dying. I've got to.
Yeah.
I mean, how did they frame that for you?
It was my doctor, the best way that she could tell me was, you're not, there wasn't any way better way to say it. Like, literally, you're just not, you don't meet the qualifications. Like, you're not sick enough. And that's it. And she was herself, she was astounded by that. Because I'm sitting in this hospital bed, right? And I can hear her in the hallway. She's on the phone and she's screaming at administration. She is telling this baby's not going to survive. You're putting this woman in jeopardy because you're too afraid legally to act. And I mean, like I said, I'm one of the lucky people that had a doctor like that who was willing to say, no, screw you guys. You need to really look in the mirror what you're asking us to do here. And finally a few hours pass by and she comes back and she's like, I'm sorry. This is it. I can't push anymore because we're not moving. They are adamant this isn't happening. And so she said, you have now two other options. My first option, I got to decide that didn't matter. And now you have another option that, hey, at least you get to have a control over the situation. And those options were you can either stay here in the hospital until your body decides it's time to do the delivery process, however long that takes, and refuse antibiotics. So you're going to have to let yourself get sick here in the hospital, where
And you're going to have to
all this.
endure what they call a dry birth.
Yeah.
Which is
And
damaging to you, horrific for the fetus. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no. That's exactly true. And so, and the other option was, or you can go home, basically not rack up a medical bill, don't have antibiotics, and we're going to send you home with a list of parameters that you have to be aware of that will let you know it's time to come to the hospital. Those parameters were if my fever gets over 100 something, if I start experiencing chills, my discharge has to turn yellow. And once it turns yellow, the smell has to be so repugnant that when you smell it initially, you retch. And once I hit those things, then, I qualify for medical care. And she hugs me and she lets me know, she says, I took a Hippocratic oath, which I see some of you guys in the comments have already said, where she says, I took a Hippocratic oath and here I am sending you out of this hospital with amniotic fluid dripping down your leg. And that's the world we live in. And I don't want to belabor. Oh, go ahead.
And to add to that, you've just been hit with the fact that, okay, 8 weeks of hospital bills is a 7-figure hospital bill. I don't care how good your insurance is. It's a 7-figure hospital bill. You and your husband are now facing the decision of financial ruin.
Yeah.
Period.
At no point did my doctor,
on top of everything else.
And on no point did my doctor in this situation also tell me I needed to leave the state either, because at this point I think in my doctor's eyes, she was also, one, confused that we were in this situation at all, too. And then two, was also like, is she really going to have to do that? Because this was new for both she and I. We were in a situation where we were just like, shocked that this even existed. And there's one thing I do want to say. In this situation, I felt okay, fundamentally sad, angry, but there was a sense of betrayal in this. And I really want to drive this point home. So I have my master's degree in political science. I grew up in a family that was very much like, there was never a, how do I put this? Because of the environment that I grew up in my house, there was never a like the government is this evil entity kind of thing. Like my dad he fought in the US military. He became a firefighter after that. My brother went to the military. He's now a police officer. I come from the type of background where it's like, especially when you're growing up in Texas, you have this identity of being part of a Texas culture that's quite unique from an American identity, right? When you're a Texan, you're a Texan. And you're a Texan first before you are everything else. And you're kind of taught that growing up. We take Texas government, Texas history as fundamental to our education. And you understand that there's a sense of community and identity in being a Texan. And when I was told that the state of Texas, when I accepted the fact, the state of Texas did not give a damn about whether or not I lived or died. It was like a sense of deep betrayal. It went against everything that you learn from a child growing up in Texas, the identity that you adopt being here, the understanding that you're a community, you're Texas strong, right?
Yeah.
And it just craps all over that. And you realize it doesn't matter. You don't matter. None of that was true. It's all a lie. And if you die, you die. And it was this deep hatred, this anger that festered inside of me. And it was just, I can't believe I was there. Is what I can say. The amount of hatred and anger, I can't believe I was there. But I think it's easy for people to, I think, kind of understand where I'm coming from in that.
You know,
So
I'm a little
go ahead.
older than you are. I've
Mhm.
got the gray beard to prove it. It didn't always, it didn't used to be that way. There was a time when I was your age and younger, the Texas biomedical research push in San Antonio and Houston and Dallas, it was it was the best in the world. We were striving to be the best in the world as far as science and medicine and in a quarter century of Republican rule, we've turned into a theocracy where you have people like Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott appealing to the churches and the pastors and people that have no idea. They talk about late term. You hear them all the time. Late term abortions. They just want to kill babies. No,
Which
folks,
is
this
which
is the
in like their
story.
definition, I think I'm considered a late term abortion, right? Like that's what I'm
Right.
considered.
And
Yeah.
that's the point I was
Um,
making is
mhm.
they talk about it like we just want, they just want to kill babies. No, if there's a late term abortion going on, folks, it is this tragedy. It is this tragedy that's happening. This is what a late term abortion is, and that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for you to come on and share. I know it's gut wrenching to go through it all again, but people need to know this, Elizabeth. They do. They need to know this.
I agree.
When
Um, what led me to speaking out about it is that I was laying in that hospital bed before I was discharged to go home. And so, like I said, my master's degree in political science, and I study focusedly American electorate reactions to laws, politicians, anything like that. And I had taken a media and politics course, and there was it was more like a side note. We didn't read the article; it was more of a side note where my professor had said, people, especially in the Republican conservative demographics, when they hear anonymous sources come out about something, they think that it's part of a liberal agenda or narrative to push a position, and that it's fake, that this anonymous source is not actually true. It's just a character that the media has created to pull at your heartstrings. And so when I was sitting there, I knew that if I was going to make anybody feel something, I needed to put my name and my face to the issue. Because if I make you look at me, if I make you look into my eyes, and if I make you come to face with the consequences of your decisions, then you have no one else to blame but the part that you played in this. And that was just, it sucks. It sucks having to be the person who's like, oh, I'm the abortion lady. It sucks. But that's what had to happen. So I end up getting sent home, and that begins the 5 days of mental hell that it's just, I would never put anybody through that. I don't care how much I hate you. No one needs to go through that. Nobody. Nobody. Not even Republican women who voted for these things. No one needs to experience what I experienced. You go home and you go to the place where you thought you were going to raise your children in. You see the room where you thought you were going to create into a nursery. My husband and I had bought paint for that room. You look at the life you were going to have with this baby. And all we did for those 5 days was lay in bed and cry with each other. That's all we did, was hold each other, and I mean wailing, crying. When you hear those, and people will tell you this about when you watch or hear, when you hear horrible news stories about women who, see their children die, right? There's a certain scream that a woman emits when she sees her children in pain or who have died. And that's the wailing that we were just doing for 5 days. Everything, it was like we were a virus of sadness everywhere we went. We went to go, one of the parameters for being at home was that you needed to check your temperature every 2 hours. And so we went out to buy a thermometer at Walgreens, and we get there. The lady doesn't know what we're going through, right? All we just asked, show me where your thermometers are. And she made a joke about, oh, obviously the thermometers are next to all the baby things. It was a joke. And we go down there, and I see these diapers, these pictures of babies next to the thermometers. And I bust out crying in front of this lady. And she doesn't know what's going on. I had to walk away. My husband had to tell her, "Yeah, I'm sure you see my wife is pregnant. This is what's happening." And I think people also need to realize that I was 20 weeks pregnant. I was showing, and I was gonna lose her. And I'm walking around pregnant. This baby's not gonna live. And so we go home and we start the process of checking my temperature every 2 hours. And we're trying to watch TV, anything to get your mind off of it. Um, at the time, Disney's What If Marvel episodes were coming out, and the episode that came out was Doctor Strange and what he would do to save his wife from dying. And you're watching, you're like, that's my situation, and you're just crying. The I think at the same time, the Wanda movie came out, and that's about her trying to get back the children that she had lost, right? And you can't escape it. It's in everything. There are two things that I really want to say here that really drive home, I think, the mental hell that we were going through. And I share these stories all the time because they're important. One morning I woke up, and so when you're going through these things, for some reason, it's got to be something just primal inside of women when they're pregnant. But you want to hold on to something tiny and soft. And I was sleeping with this little star. It was like a Nintendo Mario star. It's a stuffed star. And I was just sleeping with it. And I guess I had been sleeping with it so much that I woke up one morning, and the "You Are My Sunshine" song was playing in my head, and I had only known the first lyric, like, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine, you make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you, so never take my sunshine away." And I didn't know the rest of it. So, I'm sitting in bed and I just Google the rest of it, and my god, the song is about a woman who is grieving the loss of somebody, and she goes to sleep dreaming about having that person in her life and wakes up to find that person is not here and that they're never there. And that was just that was it set the tone for the rest of the day. You're just sitting there grieving and mourning this little baby inside of you that in your mind is gone, but she's still there. And I can't help but think that my baby has no amniotic fluid. The sac is pretty much empty, absent of her in there. The pressure of my body is closing in around her. How is this comfortable? I am actively hurting my fetus, my baby. That's what I felt. Um, I start vomiting from the pressure of everything. And I call the clinic and I'm telling them, "Hey, I'm vomiting. I can't hold anything down." That's not one of the symptoms of sepsis. So it's due to the fact that you're going through this. It's the mental toll. Um, After that, there's the next thing, the other story that really I think drives this home is the Friday before I was finally able to have my abortion. I woke up that Friday and I heard this high pitched noise inside of me, and it sounded like that. It sounded like that, and it's gas. Like that was a sound of gas inside of my body. And when you're in this situation, your brain is fried. I thought in that moment that that noise was my baby screaming for her life because she was dying. I was so convinced of that I called the clinic and I said, "You need to get me in to see my doctor because I think she's dying right now. And if this is happening, then we need to move, right? You need to get me out of this hell." And so they said, and again, my doctor was so great. Absolutely, you come in. You come in. Um, we're gonna fit you in. And so I came in on Friday. Um, and in that moment while we're waiting in the clinic for the first time, my husband goes, "I can't do this anymore. We need to start looking at flights." I said, "Okay." I'm like, "Where are we gonna go?" And he said, "I don't know. I don't care. New Mexico, Colorado, it doesn't matter. We just need to get out." And I said, "Okay." So he looked up those states and we were like, "Oh my God, we have to find somebody to watch the dogs at the house. We got to find somebody to do all this. We can't just leave." And I'm the type of person who doesn't want to be a burden to other people. And so we're just like, I don't want to ask somebody to last minute do this. We're looking at the cost of the flights and we're just like, it doesn't matter. We have to. And then they call us in. I'm sat down. Uh, they run the scan, and I asked them, "Hey, can you turn off the heartbeat thing because I can't hear it anymore. I can't hear her heartbeat again." They're like, "Yeah, absolutely." Um, and my doctor goes, "I'm so sorry, but unfortunately, your daughter still has a very strong heartbeat." And I said, "So where do we go here? Like, how long is this going to take?" She says, "We don't know. The thing is that the amniotic fluid is there for development. Your body's acting as a generator. My colleagues think this won't last very long, but I'm saying, she is saying, it's going to last as long as it needs to take. I can't give you a timeline." And so we're like, so I asked my doctor, I said, look, it's gotten to the point where we need to make a decision now. I need to, and I asked her, I was like, do I need to leave the state? She goes, I think you might have to because it's taking too long. We're not moving. Um, but then she says, but I need to tell you one last thing, and I'm so sorry to add this to the burden of what you're already going through. But she tells me, I need, as your doctor, to tell you that if you decide to get on to that you decide that you're going to do you're going to drive there, it takes hours to get out of the state of Texas. You need to understand that what if you go into labor in that car? You've never been pregnant before. We don't know if you're going to hemorrhage. We don't know if you're going to bleed out. We don't know how you react to delivery. If you get on a plane, what happens if you go into labor on that plane? And this was just another thing that was just, you're right. At the time, because the doctors were also kind of vague on how to navigate the legal sphere of this, she was also telling me we also don't know what the criminal and civil repercussions of the act of what you're going to do is. And that was something that I was just like, does it matter anymore? Does it matter if they put me in jail for quote unquote murder? Does it? It doesn't matter anymore.
And to expand on that, I just banned somebody from the channel. We had a troll come in here that made a hateful comment. Um, these are the kind of people. There's a town right next to my little rural town here called Chandler, and they decided that they were going to pass an ordinance that if you had driven through Chandler on your way to take care of your medical problem, they were going to charge you with murder
Yeah.
in Chandler.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these hateful people that are ignorant, don't know a damn thing, are just freaks. I don't know any other word for it. They're just freaks.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there. They're still out
They
there
are.
engaged in their hateful attacks. And it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're okay.
just keep in mind, folks, when she is telling you this story that they're planning their trip on how to deal with this, that what's going on in this state with people on the other side of the political spectrum is hate. They're trying to figure out how to hurt Elizabeth as
Yeah.
much as humanly possible. But anyways, that I apologize. I mean, you're planning your trip. Y'all are getting ready to leave.
Yeah, and so I leave, and so I'm about to leave that hospital or the clinic room, and my doctor says, before you leave, I need to tell you that the hospital that you were at, it's public at this point. I was at the Methodist Hospital in the Woodlands, and they basically told me, um, the hospital that you were at, they're getting together a board of lawyers, doctors, and patient forward activists who probably had a degree in medicine too. You know, I just use that word because that was the lack of a better word on my part. Um, and they're putting together a board to review the case that you're in. And so I was like, okay. And she was like, but I don't know how long this is going to take. And she told me up front, she said, honestly, I think this is just a way for them to cover their asses. Um, in case you decide to do something about it, in case you decide to bring a legal suit against them. I think this is the way for them to cover their asses. And I don't know if it's actually going to result into anything. And so I was like, okay, great. So we left. We started thinking about prices, and we go into the car. We're about to drive home, and I feel this gush come out of me. And um, and I hurry back home because I need to check what that gush was. And lo and behold, in my pad is yellow discharge. And I smelled it and I was disgusted by it. And I was like, this is it. This is it. Uh, this is horrible, but I need people to understand this. After 5 days of miserable mental hell, physical pain, emotional, mental exhaustion, after 5 days of your brain being on survival mode, finally, and this is sick to say, but it was like hitting the lottery. The lottery. It was like hitting the lottery to know that my body had formed an infection in my uterus and that I was finally showing the signs of sepsis. My husband and I, out of being in survival mode for 5 days, felt happy that there was a clear road for healthcare for us, that there was and it's weird to say light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't, but for us it felt like, no, there's a solution now. Now I can get help. And so at this point, I got a wipe. I collected my discharge. I put the discharge in a bag and I brought it to the hospital because I told my husband, there's no way they're going to tell me that they don't believe me now. And so we went back to the emergency room, got in, and the ER and the charge nurse was there. And I'm telling him everything that's happened. And he's looking at me. He's giving me this face of like, what? And I show, and I'm done. I'm devastated, right? I'm just exhausted. And I pull out this bag. And this bag has literally like it had a tissue like this in it, and it had a sample of my discharge in it, yellow. And I show it to him, and he goes, no, Miss Weller, at no point should you ever have to come to the emergency room with evidence of what you're going through. And I was like, I stared at him and I almost wanted to cry because I was angry. I was like, you tell me that now, but that's not my experience. And so it just so happened, I'm not very much a religious person, but it was the way it happened. I'm sitting there having this conversation with him. My doctor calls me up. And again, it shows you how horrible the situation this is. She's calling me, and her voice is literally in a good mood. She's in a good mood because she just came out of the board meeting where they decided, and, I'm pretty sure this is me paraphrasing, but it's very close to the words that they used. And it was that the hospital had decided that what they were putting me through was not in alignment with the values of their institution, and therefore I should get a medically necessary abortion. It was a group of, it was a lot of people, my doctor, multiple doctors, lawyers, and patient advocates were there, and they were just reviewing my case, and they decided this goes against our values, so we have to do it. It took that to conclude the fact that what they were doing was inhumane. And that day they said, Elizabeth, you're gonna get the abortion. And I think that was the first time that they used that word. And my husband and I in this ER, it hurts to say, my husband and I in this ER helped each other and we were saying yes, yes. We were so happy because we got to end our suffering and the suffering of what was going on inside of me. And so we headed upstairs and we started the long multi-hour process of getting put back into the system, of, you know, getting the process started. And they were like, we're going to induce labor. We have to take a pill. We have to, do it the way we do it. And if it gets so bad, we can give you an epidural. Um, and so I'm sitting there. They start giving me the pain medications. They begin the process of inducing labor. It did become so painful for me that I had to get an epidural, which was painful in itself. I'm sure other women who have had to get it, it's horrible. It's a horrible pain. Um, and I had this incredible nurse who was just amazing the entire time. Oh, before they induce labor, this is Texas really wants to stick it to you right before you do this. They gave me the pamphlet, which is I think it's the Right to Know. I think it's called Right to Know, and you can find that PDF online if you're interested. And they give you this pamphlet to anybody who is getting an abortion in the state of Texas. And it's kind of long. I want to say maybe 14 pages or so. And the nurse comes in and she's like, "Look, I'm sorry, but legally I am mandated to give you this pamphlet. You don't have to read it. It's the situation that you're in. Like honestly, nobody should have to read it. So here, just give it to your husband, right?" And my husband just takes it. I'm an academic. I want to know what the hell's being given to me. So I said, no. Give me that. Give me that. I want to read it. The state of Texas wanted me to know 3 things. It's very important that the state of Texas wants you to know these 3 things. Okay. So I'm going to mention them. The state of Texas wants you to know that nobody can convince you to have an abortion. The state of Texas would like you to know that the act of doing an abortion will cause you irreparable mental health issues. And that the state of Texas would like you to know that going through this will likely increase your probability of getting breast cancer. And I am sitting here
Probability of what? I'm sorry.
of,
Probability of
of
what?
getting breast cancer. Yeah, yeah. And so I'm sitting here, and at this point, it's a joke to me. At this point, through everything we have been through in this entire process, I'm sitting in this hospital bed, finally getting care that I need. And I'm reading this pamphlet and I'm like, this is a joke. This is a joke. Because, yeah, no one can convince me to have an abortion. And yet, the state of Texas was fighting tooth and nail to get me to not have an abortion, to convince me to not have one. The state of Texas was telling me that this is going to be detrimental to my mental health. I wouldn't. I have gone through trauma in my life. I have faced a lot of trauma in my life. There's a lot of other experiences that women navigate in this world that, if you are unlucky enough to have experienced in your life, will traumatize you for the rest of your life. But a lot of women, we get through it because sadly, it's a part of being a woman. This is the one incident in my entire life where I am now on antidepressants for. This situation has caused me to be on antidepressants. I don't know if I would have been on antidepressants had this been just a miscarriage that was handled properly. But I do know that because of those 5 days of horror, and I have journaled about this, and I've pinpointed the fact that I was sent home to come to terms with the fact that I mean, I was literally thinking my body was a sarcophagus. Um, you don't just move on from those thoughts. I'm on antidepressants now that I have to take daily because if I skip a day, I feel it. I feel it. I think about the situations that we were in, and it kills the day. So there's that one. I ended up looking up the sources about the studies that led towards the increased possibility of getting breast cancer, and that was a bunch of malarkey. And they also definitely want to push the idea that you can choose adoption, and it's just like that's not an option for me either. That's not a thing you can do. And so we
You know, I just want to drive home this point that while we're talking about this, the whole process that they do that, well, 15 weeks, we're going to ban it at 15 weeks. We're going to ban it folks, it is ass backwards. The later in the term, the healthcare, the services become more vital, not less. They become more vital because this is what's happening in a late term abortion. This is what's the reality of it. It's not that fantasy land bullshit that Republicans are always putting out there. Y'all just want to kill babies. I'll just, does anything that you have heard comport to anything you have ever heard from the right on this? It doesn't. It's just not reality. And their whole approach of, well, moving the date earlier and earlier and earlier just makes this worse and worse and worse. They're
There's a
literally forcing this on women, this exact scenario on woman after woman after woman.
There is a comment right here that I would like to highlight. I don't know if you can. I think it probably moved already to the top. But it's by Altruism is Imaginary. Before Roe, many Catholic nuns secretly performed abortions. They were better than some of others back then. Even they know it's BS. And yeah, absolutely. Like it's insane. I actually was jaw dropped when I read that myself. To think because it's a humanitarian issue. It really is. So we were able to go ahead and do the abortion. One of the weird parts about it, and this does split. I think some of the people on the abortion side, because it's kind of personal to the person. I think, I had to feel my baby leave my body. It was, I'll never forget that. Um, I felt I said, "Oh, something big just left my body" to my nurse, and my nurse came up to me, moved the blanket. She made this face. She said, "I'm sorry, that's baby." And I said, "Okay." Um, and in that moment, because you're just delusional. You're just delusional. I said, "Oh, I thought that would hurt more." She was like, "No, you know." And they start the process of cleaning me up, getting my clots out, the process of the ugly part after childbirth, right? And they're doing all that, and she says, "Would you like to hold her?" And I was very opposed to it for a while because I didn't know what she would look like. I was very scared. I didn't know. And I said, "No, no, 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 no." But she said, "Okay, well, if you ever change your mind throughout this entire process, you let me know." I said, "Okay." And then I said, Okay, yeah, let me hold her." And they brought this tiny little red human. I mean, she fit in the palm of my hand. That tiny, that tiny. And I'm 5'1". My hands are small. Okay. But she fit in the palm of my hand. And they laid her down on me. And throughout this entire process, there's a part of you. It's got to be just inherently human. It's got to be where even though you know the right decision, there's a part of you that was just like, no, no, no. Could I have fought this? Could I have made sure she survived? Was there anything else I could have done to make sure she lived? Was there anything else? And as I'm holding her, it hits me right there that this was the right thing I did because she was small, so small compared to my bosom. Like there was no way this little baby, this little fetus, there was no way, there was no chance of survival for her. And in that moment for me, it's like, yes, it's sad that I had to hold my baby, but at the same time, it also helped me realize that there was no other option. This was it. Um, that moment for me, I kind of like move forward. So I will say I took too long mental health, um, to get my mental health assessed. I did. I think this
Well,
happened in
there's no
2020.
there's no roadmap for this.
Oh
You
yeah,
can't say that about
absolutely.
yourself. I mean, you
Absolutely.
can't say that.
Well,
You did what you had to do when you had to, and there's don't do that. You
I
did what
so
you
like
had to do.
no, well, so I agree with you. What I'm saying is that, like, I don't think I saw us because I had to end up seeing a psychiatrist. I don't think I saw a psychiatrist until last November. Last November, and what I went through was in 2022. So and most of the women that I knew that were in this lawsuit were already taking medication. and I kind of put it off. I did, and a lot of it was just the fear of opening everything up in that type of setting. Because I can go out and I can do these talks, right? I can speak to audiences. I can do it because it's a driving purpose. It serves a greater meaning. Doing this with you serves a greater meaning. It's a greater purpose. There's real life impact that it can have. But putting yourself into a therapist's room, right? That's a different thing. You have to come face to face with yourself. And that it's just something I was putting off. These type of issues, they mess you up. They mess up your family dynamic. Most marriages end when their children die because it's hard for them. It's hard for them to stay with each other. Me and my husband struggled through stuff. We're better now. A lot of it had to do with the fact that I got on medication because I needed it. I needed it. And it was just very hard. And so I know that, like we said, I can't really go into the details of the cases and stuff like that. But I will say, because it is public knowledge, it's public record. Um, One of my sister plaintiffs, and I call them sister plaintiffs, is she shared the story of when her baby was going to be born without a skull, and the state of Texas told her, "No, you can't have an abortion." And she told on the stand that when she delivered her child, she had to watch that baby suffocate to death. And it didn't hit me until I was in that courtroom. That's probably what happened to mine, because she didn't really have lungs developed at 20 weeks. And the nurse made a face, and I always wondered what that meant, because the nurse was very adamant. No, she died, you know. And of course, that happened. But what happens in those milliseconds? You know, what happens in that moment? And when I heard what happened with my
You're talking about Amanda Zarosky, correct?
no, no, this was actually her name is Samantha. I think her
Oh,
last name is Chapa. And
I remember reading the story. And medically, folks, if you don't understand, without a cranium, you don't have the support for. You cannot swallow. You cannot
there's no
breathe.
life.
It provides a structure for the air passages. This infant had none of that. They knew this infant had none of that. This fetus had none of that. It was not going to survive, and this mother had to endure this fetus being born and suffocating before her because of what they all knew was going to happen anyways.
There's another lady in Georgia. Her name escapes me right now. She's a great woman, honestly. I went to the White House with her to talk to Dr. Jill Biden. She's an incredible woman. And she had to deliver her child in a toilet. Uh, this is the America. This is the South we live in, really. I mean, it's happening everywhere, but it's predominantly really focused on the South, and this is where it's happening. And it's gross. It's disgusting that this is the world we live in. I've said this before. This state is not pro-life; it's pro-torture. Those 5 days were torturous, and that's just my story. I got out of this being the best case scenario. That's that should horrify people. And I will tell you, like, I see these other women, and I'm just like, I don't know how you did it. Zawarski, Amanda, she hemorrhaged. She almost died. Like, she was closer to death than I was. We were all close to death, but if we were to fractionally put this in, like, how close did we get to it? Amanda was the closest. And how do you do? We would, the thing is, oh, well, maybe that governor would, but we wouldn't put dogs through this. We wouldn't put animals through this. We
They
just
don't.
wouldn't.
They don't let cattle endure this. They don't.
No, it's horrible. We don't let animals go through this, and yet living, breathing human beings. I was actually just watching The Sopranos, and it kind of touches on this. But so they were talking about sociopaths and how they have a sympathy that only gets shown for animals and babies. And you do with that what you will. You do with that information
Yeah,
what you
because
will.
in the state of Texas, if you allowed a cow to endure what the story you just told us, it's criminal. They could charge you with
Yeah,
abuse and
that's
neglect
animal
of an animal.
cruelty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we do that to people. So it's
And
yeah, go
folks,
ahead.
if you think that you're upset now and you're hurt now, listening to the reality of what these situations are, and you're raw now, let me just add that there were oral arguments in this case already, and the Supreme Court heard not just what you just heard, but they heard other women's stories, and they were told this is not an uncommon thing. In late term abortions, this is what we're facing. This is the reality. It's not the, oh, they want to kill babies. These Supreme Court justices heard this and came to the decision that this law was not a burden to doctors and that they just needed the Texas Medical Board to clarify a few things and everything will be fine. Folks, this is our Texas Medical Board. The Texas Medical Board is half appointed by the governor. And these are the folks that we're talking about on the Texas Medical Board.
So I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Go
But there
ahead.
was a comment in here earlier, and it was about they weren't being rude. I think they were just saying that people were saying that they were quoting somebody saying that you needed to sue your doctor. And so I want to touch up on that because I know that's actually something that I think a lot of people get confused about. So the medical board actually reached out to me after the NPR article had come out. And I also want to, this is kind of funny, the Methodist PR team actually reached out to me too because they wanted to work with me, right? Because they wanted to save themselves the PR nightmare that was probably going to come. And so the medical board did reach out to me after that article came out, and they wanted me to launch a complaint against, like to at least put this on record that this had happened. And so I was, more than willing to do it. I was going to launch the complaint, and then what happened was that I told them up front. I said, I don't want to launch the complaint against my doctor. I am not looking to sue my doctor. I have told you in this entire story that my doctor was my advocate. She was the person that was willing to go up to bat for me. Um, After this entire thing, me and my husband got her a clock and we engraved it with a beautiful message for her because we were just so thankful for her being there for us. So I wasn't going to sue my doctor, and I told him that's not what I want to do. I want to launch the complaint. If I have to launch the complaint through the Texas Medical Board, then what I want to do is launch it towards the hospital as an entity, as a whole, so that this is at least reflected that this did happen. And then when I tried to do that, the system is not set up for a complaint towards the hospital. It's set up for you to specifically point out a doctor so that they can move forward with that. And I wasn't about to do that to my doctor.
Somebody they can scapegoat somebody. They
Yeah,
can do.
I was not about to do that to my doctor. And so I stopped responding. I was like, no, that's not the route I want to take. That's not going
The,
to
the,
happen.
the Texas Medical Board is a joke. It is a joke. It is just like everything. Republicans don't believe in government. They don't. So everything that they run that is part of government is a joke. Let me just run through this real quick, okay? You're talking about people that have to deal with your complex situation. It's a mix of doctors and appointees. The president is Sheriff Zafran. He's an anesthesiologist. Okay, great. An anesthesiologist. There are a lot of complications with anesthesia. Seemed like it'd be good to have an anesthesiologist, right? Then you've got Sharon Barnes. Sharon Barnes is not a doctor. She's appointed by the governor. Her specialty is HR. She's in human resources. That's her thing. And more specifically, she works with Freeport LNG, liquid natural gas, and Dow Chemical Corp. You've got Devinder S. Bhatia, MD. the highly qualified surgeon here. He's a thoracic surgeon. You'd want him on the board. You would. I mean, that's good. I mean, it's not all bad. Don't get me wrong. But you got Michael here, Kokinos. His qualifications to be on the Texas Medical Board is he's the founder of Kokinos Energy Corp. And these are the people, keep in mind, that we want, that the Texas Supreme Court has said, hey, you know what? We've heard these complex situations. These are the people we need to come up with guidance for doctors. You've got George L. Deloach, D.O. He's the chief of surgery at St. Luke's in Livingston, Texas. He is a orthopedic surgeon. You've got James DeStefano. He is also a DO. He is the team doctor for Texas A&M. Ooh. I mean, if you got to talk about the issues that Elizabeth just went through, why wouldn't you want the team doctor of Texas A&M writing that guidance? I mean, am I right or am I right? You've got Candace Farmer. She's a radiologist. I'm sure radiology's input on the new guidelines, the clarifying guidelines for what doctors can and cannot do in Elizabeth's situation. I'm sure the radiologist was invaluable, along with Robert Garcia here. Robert Garcia is a realtor. He's a real estate agent. And then you have Tamika M. Herod. She is the president of Wilkins Group. Wilkins Group, it goes on and on. Wilkins Group installs telecommunications equipment.
Cool.
And these people are tasked by the Texas Supreme Court to rewrite the guidelines around these complicated situations. I've got a better idea. I do. Stay the hell out of it. Yeah. Stay the hell out of it. You have trained physicians in every hospital that understand that you, Elizabeth L. Weller, wanted a baby, and their goal was to get you that baby if they could. Already went through with you all the medical decisions and came to but no, we've got to have the A&M team doctor weigh in on this, man. Evil Popeye and his political concerns, all of this crap. There was a comment just a little bit ago that says, Texas Paul, I'm pro-life. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. So
what does that mean? You're pro-life.
It's not pro-life.
There's nobody out there saying, oh, well, hell, it's Tuesday. Let's go have some, you know what's fun? Let's get us an abortion. That's a good time.
I can tell you that throughout this entire experience, it's been an eye-opener for me. Because for people in the comment section to know, I grew up, my parents are conservative evangelicals. It's the type of environment I grew up in. So I actually know how to talk to people about this issue. And you see people's minds change, which is very nice to know. But when I was going through this whole thing to look for an attorney, I'd spoken with you about this earlier, that I had called the Texas State Board, and they gave me a list of attorneys throughout the state of Texas to call. And it was throughout all Texas cities in the state of Texas. I called them all, and they told me I have a case, but that they weren't going to take it because, going up against the state of Texas and you're an attorney practicing in the state of Texas, that's a career death right there. It took, and this is something I've shared with my attorney through tears. It took an out-of-state attorney from New York to give a damn about us, about these women. And again, that kind of drives home the betrayal that I felt from the state of Texas, is that we all say we're in this together. We're in our Texas state pledge, one state under God, one and indivisible. No, we're very divisible. We're very divisible.
Because these Republicans are vindictive as hell. They are vindictive as hell. Every one of those attorneys told you, you've got a case. Yeah, you've got a case. Mm-hmm. They will destroy me. They will. Yeah. They will utilize, they just used our surplus. We had a $30 billion surplus that could have gone to so many critical needs in this state, and they used it for a political stunt at the border. Mm-hmm. and a
We have
tax
we
boondoggle that's not really any reform of our tax system at all. It didn't. It was basically a rebate to people who didn't really give us the surplus, because the surplus came out of sales taxes due to inflation. The state of Texas expected X amount of money to come in. When they got the additional money, it was from additional sales taxes due to inflation. So people that paid sales tax are the reason we had that surplus. Did they give it back to everybody? No. No. They gave you a property tax rebate. I got half my taxes cut, but everybody that rents an apartment, rents a home, that also provided that they didn't get a rebate. And next year when it's not there, no, nothing. Nobody gets anything. But Johnny Got Rocks got his valuations paused for 3 years. If you own a mall or you own an apartment complex, this is the way these were. I know it seems like I'm going off on a tangent. This is the way these people think. They're like, let's let the team doctor over at A&M address this situation, because go Aggies, go Aggies.
When you live in a state that funds athletic departments more than the academic, what do you expect, right? There's a comment right here that I kind of wanted to shout out. This said there should be nothing between a doctor and a woman, nothing. Yeah, I think that's a fundamental truth for a lot of people. And it reminds me of something that happened in the courtroom. Again, this is the public part, though. This is something that has been, I'm pretty sure there's probably the transcript, and this has had to do with the injunction one that we did in Austin last year. So I'm pretty sure that's all public information at this point now. The state brought it in. So they didn't have any doctors on their argument, right? Our side had the doctors. So let me paint a picture of what this looked like. It was 8 attorneys on our side, and the state brought in 2. These 8 attorneys represent whatever cluster of the women of us that are in here. And the state had brought in a woman who is considered a doctor. I don't think she's a medical doctor. I think she's just PhD doctor. And she's part of a group that's actually very pro-life. Shocker. And when she went up there, she said something that is, so what she said was, their argument was that the law needed to be clearer, and that the law needed to kind of just or that the law was already clear enough, and it's actually doctors that are misinterpreting it incorrectly, right? And so she was going off of this argument that this is exactly what needs to be done, and that it's women like me who are I can't even think of the word that she used, destroying, basically, what they like to say is that when you're doing an abortion, you're blendering babies, right? That's what the imagery they like to use. And she said that these women will destroy their babies because they're anything less than perfect. The reason why I bring this up is because the argument that they were presenting using her, and our attorneys were incredible. They actually were able to use her words against her, because she's a walking hypocrite, really. Anyway, what she was saying here was that they needed to have somebody there that could actually interpret the law in a better way, and that's actually where the problem is. And so me and my sister plaintiffs, we kind of just looked at each other and we were like, so she needs to be in the room for every pregnancy? She needs to be in the room every time there's a pregnancy complication? That woman needs to be in the room every time something happens? Because clearly the system works perfectly, but we're just missing what? Your brains. So how are you going to make that happen?
Yeah, that's an outstanding point. That's an outstanding point. We have a system in place. We have healthcare professionals. There are not doctors out there saying, "Ooh, boy, let's do some abortions." That is a last possible step. If you had something going wrong, and if you've got carpal tunnel syndrome, they don't cut your damn hand off. They do everything they can to fix the problem. Same thing with pregnancies. When there are complications in pregnancies, there are already doctors fighting to save those babies as much as they can. It's literally what they exist for. But no, we need evil Popeye thinking for them, because apparently these people, these freaks, know better. They know better.
Like what they would love to do that, Melissa Jules. Yeah, it says please do some Black media. I would love to do that for Black media outlet. I think that's very important because Black women are already, the top demographic to die from pregnancy complications in the state of Texas. Then you add this on top of that. Who's going to be the best? Who's going to be the biggest demographic impacted? But what I wanted to say is, are we really at the point where the party of small government is saying that they need to have a state representative in our hospital rooms?
Yeah,
Because
that's
that's
exactly
that's
what
where
they're
it
saying.
feels like it is. Yeah, it feels exactly like
And
that.
actually,
And
it's worse than that, Elizabeth. It's worse than that. We talked about the religious aspect of this before. They don't want to do the work. They don't work. Republicans don't work. Republicans don't actively engage in government. What the Republicans want to do is they want to put a pastor in your room.
yeah,
That's what they want. They want to send you through the church
yep.
to do what you need to have done. They want your doctor controlled and managed by the church. They want your hospital accountable to a church and a pastor, because the Republicans don't want to do this.
So
Great question.
yes,
They said, "Are you
bicycle
still in
Mike.
Texas?"
Yeah. Yes, bicycle Mike. I love cycling. I am still in Texas. My husband and I thought about moving. What sucks is that we bought a house right before the pandemic, which is lucky, but we got it at a great rate. And also, you can't just move out of the state of Texas. My degree is in, so there's a few things keeping us here. My degree is in political science. Specifically, because I'm in Texas, I know more about our political system and government here in the state of Texas. And to work in politics and in government, it's like any other industry. You know who you know, and it helps you get into places where you're at. And I'm kind of locked here with that career. But also I will say that doing this has kind of also inspired me to stay here. On the other hand, my husband is also a teacher, and as effed up as the education system is in the United States, and especially in the South, um, Texas is actually one of the more competitive states for teacher pay, as with exception to the city of Houston. I want to say to the city of Houston, because I will say that teacher pay in a lot of the rest of Texas is crap. It's absolutely crap. People are not surviving off of teacher pay. My husband is a math teacher, so there's that. That does help us out a little bit, because there's also that bias in education that they do pay STEM
You
teachers a
know,
little bit more.
I get it all the time, Elizabeth. I get it all the time. Texas, Paul, how can you live in Texas? How can you think the way you think? And then I get these ridiculous morons on the right. You need to move to California. No, no, no. I'm just going to take the state back to what it used to be when Democrats ran the state, when we cared
And
about science. We cared about, it didn't used to be an insult to call somebody an Aggie.
yeah,
A&M used to be a great school before, they
yeah,
put, what was it, Phil Sims or whatever his name was? Pardon me, Phil Graham. They put him in there as chancellor of the school. Just the Republicans have destroyed every instant, and we're going to fix it. I got a better idea. Vote. Enough is
yeah,
enough. No, let's not run away. Let's not run
yeah,
away.
and
Let's
and
stay
and that's
and fight it out.
and I will say that doing this, talking to people, Republicans, Democrats, liberal, conservatives, talking to these people about these situations, you can see the gears starting to turn. I've worked on campaigns, and when you work in campaigns, you're literally talking to the voter every day. You're talking to hundreds of voters every day. And when they hear these issues, they go, how is this a thing? And so there are these moments like, now, trust me, I'm very cynical about things. Okay. I've done a lot more interviews that really go into the academic study of politics. I understand it's bleak. I get it. But I will say that when I do have these conversations and I do talk to these everyday voters, these Republicans, these conservatives, and they hear this story, they go, oh, I didn't think you. And are they going to be, the most pro choice individuals after that conversation? No, no. But they're going to go forward in their lives, at least giving it a second thought. And for the most part, that's a lot of what you can hope for.
Well, Elizabeth, that's exactly why I wanted to have you here because, I hear so much nonsense, such idiocy from people that don't know anything about this subject. And having you here and sharing your story and telling people this is what's really happening. And when you know what's really happening, what's being done in the state just is that much more horrific. It really is. And I'm telling you, folks, vote. Vote. Enough is
Oh,
enough. It is time to.
upcoming is 3 judges that are their term seats are coming up. Those 3 judges have the power to make the state even more red or just, slightly leaning to the other side. I'm part of a political action group called Find Out. It's Find Out PAC. And they've taken it upon themselves to, run this message home, run this attention of saying, these are the 3 judges that are up for election. These are the 3 judges that you need to vote out, that we need to change. I've had people ask me the question, like, why is it so important to stay focused on the legal part of this? Well, one, at the basis of this entire case is legal language. So it goes down to how these judges are interpreting the law that is going to make the difference of life and death for a lot of women in this state. But yeah, in the country too, right? So the life and death difference for a lot of women in the state. And so that's very important to keep your eyes out on. And I wanted to say that the reason why I want to really emphasize this legal election, like this judicial election coming up, is because we've seen it, right? There's been a lot of hope for a lot of Texans who were supporting Beto O'Rourke. Twice he's lost in our state. The second time probably because he said something kind of dumb at the national stage that made a lot of Texans go, well, never mind. And that kind of ruined his chances here when he was running for governor. But the political field here in Texas is hard. It's hard to switch these high profile seats like senator and governor. But in the legal sphere, less people vote in these areas. These aren't popular, seats that bring out voters because a
We're
lot
going
of
to row
people
the
don't.
vote. We're going to row the vote. This is huge.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling people. You need to be involved now more than ever. This has been a tectonic shift in politics. We are going to row the vote. We really are. This election is different. This is the one you need to be involved in. You need to be volunteering in. You need to find these groups. You need to support these groups. You need to be working for candidates. This, more than any other election, facing the 2025 project, facing what the Republicans are doing with women's rights, this is a very, very different election for we Democrats, and we need to push like we've never pushed before. Elizabeth, I really am grateful for you being here. We're way over. We're 20 minutes
I know.
over. It was a
It,
great conversation. I really
it happened.
appreciate you being here. You've got a standing invitation. I love listening to you talk. There will be more situations coming in between now and the election. Promise me you'll come back and we'll talk about some politics and some things that are going on.
I will tell you this. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to talk politics substance with somebody. So if you want to have me on, and we don't necessarily have to talk about abortion, but we talk about the nuances of politics, I am here for it.
I appreciate you. And as you get updates, you've got my contact information. Keep me in the loop as to what's going on so I can keep the folks here engaged with what's going on. Well, folks, this is what I had for you today. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. Enjoy some Texas cities at night.